The calm before the storm. Elena had always believed that the universe spun with poetic justice, a balance where every betrayal and heartbreak ultimately led to a deeper understanding of the self. Yet nothing in her years of quiet introspection had prepared her for the day the delicate tapestry of her life unraveled into chaos. It was a crisp autumn morning when Elena left for a business trip, her heart light with anticipation for the challenges ahead. Little did she know, the physical distance from home would soon be eclipsed by an emotional chasm that would forever alter her existence. The morning light spilled into the modest apartment she shared with her husband, Daniel, and her younger sister, Miriam. Elena had chosen this trip as an opportunity to escape the routine and reflect on her ambitions. Over the years, Daniel's reassuring presence had provided a comforting counterbalance to the uncertainties of life, and Miriam's youthful exuberance had brought laughter into every corner of their shared home. Their lives, intertwined and seemingly harmonious, painted a picture of domestic bliss, until the moment of revelation shattered that illusion. As Elena traveled miles away, she was absorbed in the business meetings and the rush of a new venture. In her mind, the journey was a necessary interlude, a pause to reorient her career and, in some quiet way, to reaffirm her commitment to the life she had built. But back home, secrets had taken root. In the absence of her calming presence, the dynamics between Daniel and Miriam began to shift imperceptibly. The easy camaraderie they once shared now gave way to furtive glances and whispered conversations behind closed doors. Elena remained blissfully unaware of the mounting tension, trusting implicitly in the bond that had once defined their relationship. Weeks passed, and Elena returned earlier than expected, a decision fueled by a sudden impulse to reconnect with the familiarity of home. Her heart pounded with excitement as she navigated the quiet streets leading to the apartment, the anticipation of reuniting with her loved ones mingling with an inexplicable sense of foreboding. The door swung open at her touch, and a cascade of memories rushed back, laughter echoing in the halls, the soft hum of shared dreams, and the promise of unconditional love. Yet, as Elena stepped inside, an unsettling silence greeted her. The warm glow of the living room lamp cast long shadows, and an eerie stillness permeated the air. Something was awry. Her footsteps, tentative and heavy, carried her down the familiar corridor, each step intensifying the disquiet that fluttered in her chest. It was then that she heard it, a muffled sound coming from the room at the end of the hall. The sound, like a cruel parody of intimacy, twisted the knife of suspicion within her. With every cautious step, the chill of dread seeped deeper into her bones. As Elena pushed open the door, the scene before her unfolded like a nightmare made manifest. Daniel and Miriam were entwined in an act of betrayal that defied reason, their indiscretions stark against the backdrop of a life Elena had thought was built on trust and mutual respect. The shock was a brutal blow, a shattering of the world she knew, and in that moment, time seemed to suspend in a taut, excruciating silence. The pain that surged through Elena was indescribable, a raw cocktail of betrayal, anger, and an almost tangible sorrow. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound inflicted by a physical blow. It was an assault on her very identity, a repudiation of the values and love she had held so dear. In that moment of overwhelming agony, her mind raced with fragmented memories of the smiles shared over morning coffee, the silent promises whispered in the dark, and the gentle caresses that once spoke of an eternal bond. In the ensuing seconds, as if driven by a force beyond her own comprehension, Elena's hand closed around the cold, unyielding metal of a knife. Her actions, though swift and visceral, were not those of a calculating villain but of a woman betrayed to the core, each heartbeat a cacophony of the shattered remnants of trust. The knife, once a mere tool of domestic routine, became an instrument of retribution, its gleam capturing the glint of a soul in torment. The moment was a paradox, a collision of passion and reason, where every rational thought was drowned in a surge of raw emotion. As the first act of irreversible vengeance unfolded, Elena's world shifted irreparably. The room, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, now bore the heavy burden of irreversible loss. Daniel's eyes, wide with shock and regret, met hers for the briefest of moments, a silent acknowledgement of the wrongs committed. In that same fleeting glance, Miriam's face, marred by both desire and guilt, seemed to plead for a mercy that would never come. The violence of the act was matched only by the profound sorrow that seeped into the corners of the room, a sorrow that spoke of lives shattered and the disintegration of a family that once promised hope and unity. Even as the final echoes of the act faded into a dissonant silence, Elena felt an icy realization creeping into her heart. The act of vengeance had been as transformative as it was destructive. The knife in her hand was not merely a weapon, but a symbol of the irrevocable fracture in the fabric of her existence. With every drop of blood spilled on the cold floor, the promise of a future filled with hope and healing disintegrated into a bitter void. In the quiet aftermath of that fateful moment, Elena's mind began to churn with thoughts of retribution that would soon evolve into a relentless pursuit, a hunt for absolution or perhaps a final reckoning with the ghosts of betrayal. The echoes of her own heartbeat were now accompanied by the distant sound of footsteps, a sound that seemed to herald the beginning of a dark, inevitable pursuit. The storm had only just begun, and in that charged silence, Elena understood that the journey she was about to embark on would force her to confront the darkest recesses of her soul. The night fell heavy as Elena stood alone in the now desolate apartment, the weight of her actions mingling with the cold, unforgiving air. A single, resolute thought cut through the haze of despair. Vengeance, in its most raw and unyielding form, had become her sole companion. As she stepped away from the scene, leaving behind a house steeped in sorrow and irrevocable loss, Elena realized that every step she took would be marked by a singular, relentless purpose. The hunt had begun, and with it, the slow, painful unraveling of everything she once believed in. In that silence, beneath the oppressive veil of a starless night, the first chapter of Elena's harrowing journey closed. The moral of her tale was yet to be written, a reflection on the corrosive nature of betrayal and the haunting price of seeking justice in a world where the line between victim and perpetrator had all but dissolved. The pursuit begins. In the aftermath of that night of irrevocable loss, the weight of Elena's actions pressed upon her like an unyielding shroud. With the haunting images of betrayal and blood etched deep into her memory, she vanished into the obscurity of a rain-soaked evening. The streets, slick with glistening puddles and illuminated by the muted glow of distant streetlights, offered little comfort. Every shadow seemed to whisper memories of Daniel's regretful eyes and Miriam's sorrowful plea, a relentless chorus urging her to confront the truth of her own transformation. Haunted by the irrevocable act, Elena found herself driven by a tumultuous blend of sorrow and fury. The very thought of the family bond once so sacred now felt like a cruel mirage. In her heart, the line between justice and vengeance blurred as she resolved to seek retribution against the unseen forces that had allowed such treachery to flourish. It wasn't enough that she had taken the lives of those who betrayed her. Elena felt compelled to hunt down every remnant of deception, every echo of false promises that had led to this calamitous point of no return. As she navigated the labyrinthine backstreets of the city, a spectral determination emerged. Elena began piecing together fragments of information, the hushed conversations of neighbors, cryptic whispers on darkened phone lines, and half-remembered memories of clandestine meetings between Daniel and unknown figures. Every clue she unearthed seemed to suggest that the betrayal had roots that extended far beyond the confines of their fractured home. It appeared that Daniel's infidelity was only one thread in a complex tapestry of lies and hidden alliances. The discovery ignited in her an obsession with uncovering a deeper, more sinister network of betrayal that might have ensnared her loved ones long before her own fateful confrontation. The investigation took her into the underbelly of the city, where dimly lit bars and backroom dealings concealed secrets that thrived in the shadows. Elena's journey was perilous. Each step into this dark realm was a step further away from the life she once knew. With each passing day, she adopted a new identity, a ghost moving through the nocturnal world, gathering evidence, and piecing together the intricate puzzle of deceit. The transformation was both liberating and terrifying. She became an avenger, a relentless seeker of truth, but at the cost of her former self, the gentle woman who had once sought only love and understanding. In a small, inconspicuous cafe on the edge of the city, Elena met with an informant known only by a pseudonym. The informant, a wiry man with eyes that betrayed a lifetime of hardship, had once been part of Daniel's inner circle. Over cups of bitter coffee, he recounted tales of secret meetings and financial transactions that painted a grim picture of corruption and betrayal. Every word he spoke deepened the labyrinth of deceit that Elena was determined to dismantle. The informant mentioned a mysterious figure, a puppet master who had manipulated events from the shadows. This figure, shrouded in mystery and rumor, was said to be the architect of many broken lives and shattered families. To Elena, this was the personification of the treachery that had consumed her own existence. The meeting ended with an unspoken promise. Elena would follow this new lead, delving deeper into the hidden networks that had corrupted not only her home but the very fabric of her community. The quest was no longer solely about personal vengeance. It had evolved into a mission to purge the rot of deceit from the heart of society. Yet, even as her resolve strengthened, the specter of guilt and isolation loomed large. Nights became a solitary vigil, with the ceaseless hum of her heartbeat mingling with the distant echoes of regret. In those solitary moments, Elena grappled with the moral consequences of her actions, questioning whether her quest for justice was a path to redemption or a descent into perpetual darkness. The city itself became a character in her unfolding narrative, a sprawling metropolis of contradictions where beauty and decay danced a precarious waltz. Every neon sign flickering against rain-drenched pavement, every deserted alleyway echoing with memories of clandestine deals, served as a reminder of the duality of human nature. In this urban labyrinth, Elena's relentless pursuit was both a means of escape and an act of defiance against the very chaos that had precipitated her downfall. Her every step was measured, calculated, and laced with the bitter determination of one who had been betrayed too deeply to ever trust again. As weeks melted into months, Elena's investigation began to reveal unsettling truths. The web of conspiracies stretched far beyond the immediate circle of her shattered family. Rumors of high-stakes deals, manipulated court cases, and even political figures entangled in a web of deceit slowly emerged. Each revelation was a piece of a larger puzzle, a picture of a society where loyalty was a commodity and betrayal was a currency. The duality of her journey weighed heavily on her spirit. With every answer uncovered, new questions blossomed, each more daunting than the last. Despite the overwhelming odds and the darkness that threatened to consume her, Elena clung to a fragile hope, a belief that even in the midst of corruption, there remained a possibility for transformation. In the deepest recesses of her soul, she yearned for a moment of absolution, a chance to reconcile the part of her that still longed for forgiveness with the monstrous actions that now defined her existence. Yet, in the relentless pursuit of those who had orchestrated her tragedy, the line between hunter and hunted continued to blur. The quest for justice was not without peril. Whispers of a shadowy force mobilizing to silence her progress began to surface, hinting at a confrontation that would test her resolve to its breaking point. In the solitary hours before dawn, as the city lay shrouded in a quiet melancholy, Elena paused to reflect on the journey she had embarked upon. With the cityscape stretching before her like an endless battlefield, she resolved that her mission was more than a quest for revenge. It was a search for truth in a world where illusions of loyalty had crumbled. Each new discovery, each fragment of evidence, was a step toward reclaiming not only her stolen dignity, but also the possibility of a future where justice might prevail over corruption. And so, with a heart steeled by sorrow and a soul alight with a burning resolve, Elena pressed forward, unaware that the ultimate confrontation with the dark heart of betrayal was drawing ever nearer. The reckoning and redemption, the relentless pursuit that had consumed Elena now reached a fever pitch. Each step along the darkened alleyways and neon-lit streets brought her closer to the heart of the conspiracy that had turned her life into a battleground of betrayal and retribution. In the quiet hours before dawn, Elena found herself drawn to an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city, a place that, according to the last cryptic message from her informant, served as the clandestine headquarters for the shadowy puppet master orchestrating the network of deceit. Inside the cavernous space, silence reigned, a silence heavy with secrets and the echo of past transgressions. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she moved cautiously, every sense alert to the slightest disturbance. The warehouse was dimly lit by a single, flickering fluorescent light, and in that harsh, intermittent glow, she could see outlines of crates and discarded machinery, relics of a forgotten era now repurposed for unspeakable transactions. It was here, amid the derelict remnants of industrial decay, that the final pieces of the puzzle awaited her. As she ventured deeper, Elena's mind replayed the memories of that fateful night. The betrayal of Daniel and Miriam, the irreversible act of violence, and the subsequent descent into a labyrinth of conspiracies that defied simple explanations. The ghost of her past haunted her every step, yet she pressed on with a determination that had been forged in the crucible of loss and betrayal. Now her mission was clear: confront the mastermind and force a reckoning upon those who had manipulated lives like fragile glass. In a shadowed corner of the warehouse, Elena discovered a room alive with whispered exchanges and furtive glances. A gathering of individuals, their faces obscured by the gloom, huddled around a table littered with documents and digital devices. The room pulsed with a palpable tension, a tension that resonated with the urgency of impending judgment. It was in this clandestine chamber that Elena finally encountered the enigmatic figure behind the string of deceptions. Clad in an impeccably tailored suit that contrasted sharply with the grim surroundings, the puppet master exuded an unsettling calm. His eyes, cold and calculating, met Elena's with a mixture of contempt and reluctant admiration. In that charged moment, words gave way to a silent duel of wills. The mastermind's voice, measured and detached, began to unravel the intricacies of the elaborate scheme. A web of corruption, betrayal, and hidden alliances that reached far beyond personal vendettas. He spoke of power, of the ease with which truth could be manipulated, and of a society that thrived on the currency of treachery. Elena listened, each revelation a dagger that drove further the realization of how deeply the rot had penetrated. Yet, even as he laid bare the machinations behind the betrayals, Elena felt a stirring within her, a glimmer of redemption in the chaos of her vengeful crusade. The confrontation escalated quickly. What began as a tense exchange of revelations soon erupted into a storm of violence and resolve. Elena, fueled by the grief of her losses and the fury of her betrayal, launched herself at the mastermind with a ferocity that belied her frail appearance. In the ensuing struggle, words were rendered futile as raw emotion took center stage. The warehouse became a battleground where the forces of justice clashed with those of corruption. Amid the chaos, Elena's determination proved to be the decisive factor. In a moment of exquisite clarity, she incapacitated the mastermind, subduing him with a blend of physical prowess and the indomitable strength of her wounded spirit. The arrest of the mastermind sent shockwaves through the underbelly of the criminal network. As the authorities moved in, alerted by the frenzied commotion, a cascade of arrests followed. The hidden cabal, long shielded by layers of deceit and intimidation, began to crumble under the weight of its own malfeasance. For Elena, the moment was bittersweet, a hollow victory marred by the memory of the lives irrevocably lost. The realization that her quest for vengeance had exacted a heavy toll resonated deeply within her. Yet, in that pivotal instant, she understood that the reckoning was not just for those who had betrayed her, but for a society complicit in allowing such corruption to thrive. In the days that followed, Elena stood before the consequences of her actions. A public trial that attracted the attention of a community desperate for closure. Her testimony, raw and unvarnished, became a rallying cry for accountability and a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal. The court of public opinion, as volatile as it was vigilant, demanded a reckoning with the hidden forces that had manipulated lives in the shadows. Elena's journey from victim to avenger, and finally to a reluctant agent of change, was chronicled in headlines and hushed conversations alike. The trial marked a turning point, a moment when the blurred lines between right and wrong were redrawn in the light of truth. Elena's story, rife with tragedy and moral complexity, sparked a broader dialogue on the nature of justice and the human capacity for both cruelty and redemption. As the verdict was pronounced and the long shadow of corruption began to recede, Elena felt a cautious optimism for the future. The wounds of betrayal would never fully heal, but in the process of exposing the rot, she had unearthed a profound lesson, that even in the darkest of nights, the search for truth could kindle a spark of hope. As the chapter of her turbulent past drew to a close, Elena resolved to rebuild not just her own life, but the very fabric of a society scarred by deceit. The road ahead promised to be arduous, yet she embraced the challenge with a steadfast heart. In the quiet moments of reflection, she pondered the paradox of her journey, the irreversible act of vengeance that had set her on a path to healing and transformation. The reconciliation between the fractured parts of her soul would be a lifelong endeavor, one that demanded forgiveness, introspection, and the courage to move forward despite the lingering shadows. To my viewers, thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found this tale as gripping and thought-provoking as I did, please subscribe, like, and share to spread the word.